start streaming. Hit record here. And there it is.
Hey, did you start yet? Sorry.
Yes.
Because I can share the YouTube link.
Please.
The YouTube channel.
I will share it with you right now.
Via text?
Yes.
Yeah, good.
Is that the preferred method?
Yeah, do it. That's
awesome. All right. And I'm going to tweet out a link myself. But we're live right now. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is another edition of Steak, Bourbon, and Sports, the show in which we eat steak, drink bourbon, and talk about sports. So where's the steak?
And your guest has the playback already. Yeah, where the hell's the steak, Ari? It's bullcrap, man.
Matt Moscona from ESPN Baton Rouge, ESPN Louisiana, after further review, joining us on the show today, and of course Chairman Mandel, my great co-host.
Yeah, just that guy.
Just that guy, the whiskey guy.
Yeah, he's
the bourbon guy.
He's still here.
So, a buddy of mine, Dan Matthews, who does a little radio in Atlanta, was like, must have seen my bourbon show and was like, hey, you should meet my buddy, Matt Moscona. He's a really cool guy, and he's huge into bourbon. And so I was like, yeah, absolutely. We should get him on. And so that happened, and it just so happens that we got you on the perfect day because you are in Baton Rouge. You're, the heart of LSU. You're wearing an LSU shirt. And
I know, right? I probably shouldn't have done that. That's
why not?
Hey,
defending national champs.
Yeah, but you know what, though, Ari? It's like, I went to LSU. I'm super proud of that. It's my alma mater, and I love not just the football program. Like, I love LSU. I mean, my wife went to LSU. It's just so part of me. But at the same time, professionally, like, I mean, I'm probably the guy around here that's most known for being the anti-homer guy. You know what I mean? Like, if you ask LSU fans, they're like, "Hey, man, that guy's a homer," right? They'll be like, "That asshole?" I mean, we can curse here, right? It's you.
Yes, absolutely.
And we're drinking whiskey.
And we're drinking whiskey. We can curse. I mean, it's just,
We're drinking and cursing and occasionally making salient points about irrelevant things.
Occasionally.
My kind of show.
Well, if you, we can start with the pessimism for LSU then, and we could just start with Scott Linehan replacing Joe Brady. What the heck is that?
Oh, no, I didn't know that happened.
Yeah.
So, you know what? I honestly think that is probably one of the most overrated talking points that people default to. Like,
you mean, do you mean Joe Brady in general and the influence that he had?
Here's the thing. So it would be disingenuous to completely discredit Joe Brady. Okay. Obviously, he brought in certain concepts that LSU needed and different ideas. But make no mistake, like, that was Steve Ensminger's offense. Steve Ensminger called that offense. Brady would call some third down plays, but Steve Ensminger organized the game plan. He delegated responsibilities. Steve Ensminger worked with the quarterbacks. Like, Joe Brady's a receivers guy. Joe Brady worked with the receivers. The real guy that was sort of the quarterback whisperer was George Munoz, who Dave Aranda took with him to Baylor.
Right.
It's so strange. If you go watch the Heisman ceremony, there's like Burrow's family, and then there's like Ed Ogeron and Steve Ensminger and Joe Brady, and then this like tall, dark-haired man, and everyone's like, "Who's that? Who's the tall, dark-haired?" That was the offensive analyst who was a record-setting OC at ULL in Lafayette that Ogeron brought in, and he kind of helped with the quarterbacks as well. And oh, by the way, here you go. So look, man, Joe Brady came at a time in transition when LSU was opening up their offense, and that made beautiful music with he and Ensminger and Joe Burrow and the whole thing the way it worked. I just think we are massively overstating the importance of Brady, or the impact of Brady leaving and Linehan coming in. I think if anything, the conversation we should all be having is about the guy who had the single greatest season for a quarterback in the history of college football. And real talk, I probably could have called plays for Joe Burrow throwing the ball to Jamar Chase.
Right.
Well, yeah, but now Joe Burrow's gone and Scott Linehan is there.
So the Joe Burrow piece is obviously the much bigger piece. So
I don't know. I've been a Cowboys fan for a while, and I can tell you that the Scott Linehan piece, just being in the room, It is a factor.
But what's his role going to be? You know what I mean? Like the most intriguing storyline with Linehan this offseason has been, basically, when he was at Detroit, he had Calvin Johnson there, and so they're talking about using this kid Ari Gilbert, who is the number one, 5-star number one tight end in the country. It just won the Gatorade National Male High School Athlete of the Year award for SI.
As if they needed more weapons.
Using him the way that Linehan used Calvin Johnson in Detroit. So if you think about it, if you got Jamar Chase, Terrace Marshall, Racey McMath, if a defense's fourth best cover guy is going to be trying to lock down Gilbert, that's just a giant mismatch. I mean, so that could be intriguing. To your point though, Jeremy, like if it were Linehan in as offensive coordinator, it would be a bigger deal.
Yeah,
but
sure.
Back to where I started, it's still Steve Ensminger's offense. It's like, hey, you have ideas, let's share ideas. You got a way we can help here, or something we can tweak and be better, cool, but it's still Ensminger's offense.
All right. There's a lot of LSU questions I have for you specifically. But I mean, let's start at the beginning here with what a crazy Tuesday in the college sports world. So I host on Sirius XM Big 12 Radio. And so during this period of time, we've been pre-recording shows, which sucks. It sucks. Yeah.
So everything you recorded today was totally irrelevant by 3:00.
Totally. I mean, luckily we recorded at a time when the Big Ten made the decision, the Pac-12 made the decision, but then we had to go back and re-record multiple segments because then the Big 12 makes a decision, which we had not taken into account. Live radio is awesome. Pre-recorded to live is horrible, and hopefully soon we'll be back to live radio. But obviously, the Pac-12, the Big Ten, they were the first to decide to play conference only. Now they're the first to decide to not play, to punt on the college football season here in the fall and maybe play in spring. We'll get to that, later, how likely that is. But, I mean, the Big 12, the SEC, the ACC, they're steadfast in trying to play. I mean, do you see that this actually happening, or do you think that this will go the same way the last pattern went?
So I think the Big 12 was the linchpin, because if it were just SEC, ACC, they probably would have punted. But because you have the majority of the Power Five, and you have a handful of Group of Five leagues that were kind of attached at the hip, in the way that the MAC was kind of attached to the Big Ten, so is like the Sun Belt and Conference USA attached to the ACC. So you're probably, and then you got the American as well. So look, I'm not a big proponent of the Group of Five. Like I'm a guy who is a college football elitist. Like I only want to see Power Five games. I never want to see the guarantee games. That actually, in a dose of irony, is that model is what's causing this structural collapse of college football.
Totally.
Because everything is just completely financially over leveraged because of games that nobody really wanted to see, and the first chance you had to drop them, you did, and it caused this massive ripple effect of college football. But I do think the SEC, I think the SEC, ACC, Big 12, as long as all three pull in the same direction, they're going to play, and they can play.
So why is the Big 10 and the Pac-12 making this decision? Is it as simple as to say that like football just matters more here in the South?
It's part of it, but it's not just football. I think you have to look fundamentally at these universities. So, like, what honestly, Ari, I think the thing that has been most enlightening for people here is this has been an educational opportunity for a lot of college football fans to realize this isn't an NCAA decision. Like, as many times as I say this, it has never registered for people, like, until now when it's had to. The NCAA does not govern college football.
Right.
Major college football. They don't. Like, whenever you watch March Madness and they cut down the nets and they give them that brown trophy, when everybody's got the little piece of the net and everybody's got the brown national championship trophy, there isn't one of those for football because the NCAA doesn't crown a football champion.
They've outsourced their best commodity.
The conferences have outsourced. The conferences collectively decided we're going to do our own thing in alignment with the bowls, and we're going to outsource it to the college football playoff prior to the BCS, whatever.
Right.
It's all these little fiefdoms. Conferences make their own decisions, and actually it's the university presidents of each university within those conferences that make their own decisions, and you hope that they collectively all row in the same direction when push comes to shove. But then you have Nebraska that's like, well, I know I'm in the Big Ten, but believe you, we want to play football. So let's go find a way to play football without all you suckers. And maybe that happens, but
Not such a cultural fit now, are you?
well, right.
Right.
But what's so funny though, Jeremy? So today on my show, I talked to Jerry DiNardo, who's a former LSU coach who's now on the Big Ten Network. And Jerry told me that he, a few years back, interviewed Tom Osborne. And he asked Tom, why the Big Ten? And he said, when realignment happened, we had nowhere to go because Texas and Oklahoma were going to the Pac-12, and we weren't invited there, and we didn't fit in the SEC. They didn't want us, and like the Big Ten were the only ones that would take us, like literally. So, it's so odd that in many ways the Big Ten kind of rescued Nebraska 9 years ago, whatever it was. And now the first time that the rubber meets the road, Nebraska's kind of like, oh, we don't need you. LSU went through something very public back in 2016. Do y'all remember the Florida Hurricane Matthew thing with LSU in Florida, and the athletic directors got to kind of feuding, and Joe Oliva, who was the LSU AD at the time, was like, "We're playing a home game," or like,
right.
Well, there's always this sort of unspoken thing where, behind closed doors you can say whatever you want, but in the public, don't air the conference's dirty laundry. And Joe Oliva broke that rule, and LSU felt the brunt of it with every decision the conference made for like 5 years. I'm so curious to see what happens with the Nebraska thing. But anyway, I think I can talk, but I think the question was about if it just means like the SEC.
No, I mean the question is really, do you think we have college football in 2020, or do you think that obviously the medical science is debatable always, right? Scientists are going to debate the merits of their own science, like that's not going to change.
Practice medicine and interpret data, yes.
Right. Absolutely. So in that regard, I mean, you're basically, you have the ACC, the SEC, and the Big 12 that are hearing different things than the Big 10 and the Pac-12. There's obviously the cultural component to those conferences too. I think that's important here in terms of football. But like, do you see actually 3 conferences here moving forward and playing in 2020?
I do, if they're committed to it. If the SEC, ACC, Big 12 all agree to play, then I think they'll play in the fall. And this goes back to the point where the thing that I've said for 5 months is they're going to play because they have to play. They have to find their yes. The easy answer would be to say no and to punt. But when you're in the SEC, it's not, and part of this conversation, I think, and guys like Darren Ravel don't do anybody any favors on Twitter when they perpetuate these stereotypes, but it's not just mouth breathers that want their foosball in the South.
Right.
It just means more like in a literal sense. I mean, in a place like Baton Rouge or College Station or Gainesville, those universities indirectly or directly account for about 20% of those respective cities' economies. Like, it's not just about going to tailgate and drink beer and cheer for your team. Like, every business is so inherently tied.
Right. Like, think about Baton Rouge. Like, what I would venture a guess that like the bars in Baton Rouge probably do 60 to 80% of their yearly revenue during football season.
It's bars, it's restaurants, it's
hotels.
Retail, it's hotels. And then by extension, don't just think of the guy that owns the hotel. Think about all of the people that work in the hotel that rely on tips. And and when that's not coming, it's
right.
Rough. Like it's really rough. And that's, you compound that by every city. And then on top of that, when you think about the universities, I think this is where we started, was with the universities. You go to a place like Stanford or SC or Cal or Michigan or Ohio State, you're talking about schools that have endowments in the billions of dollars. Like, one of the most ridiculous stories of the past month has been Stanford cutting 11 sports and saying, well,
right. Yeah.
Like, you realize Stanford's endowment is $27.7 billion. Like, so people who might be confused, that's liquid. Like, Stanford, SoFi Stadium, which they just built for the Rams and the Chargers at $5 billion. Stanford could pay for that bitch cash money and still have $22.7 billion left in the bank. And
They
you
could pay for 5 of them.
and you can't fund the cricket squad or whatever. Like, give me a break. They wanted to get rid of those programs.
Right.
COVID was a convenient way to do it. But my point is, if Stanford doesn't play football, Stanford's okay. If LSU doesn't play football, LSU has no reserve. Like, their endowment is in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, you're already talking about a state that is so cash strapped in higher ed that, like, the governor had to lobby for budget reform a few years back, or he threatened if certain sessions are canceled at LSU, there may not be enough for the football players to go to class, and we may have to cancel football. Like, that was a bargaining chip the governor had to use to get funding for higher ed in the legislature a few years ago. It's just, you're talking about completely different realities here at LSU and Bama, and now A&M's different because A&M's got more money than God, but most SEC schools relative to most Big Ten and Pac-12 schools.
Well, given that reality, my impression this whole time has just been, well, no matter what any of these other conferences do, the SEC is playing. And you can say that it's for economic reasons or for stereotypical reasons or whatever. But in the end, my thought's always been, isn't just the SEC champion being the national champion by default every SEC fan's desire anyway? Like, who really needs these other conferences?
Don't get it twisted, man. LSU fans, SEC fans love to go toe-to-toe with Clemson and hang 45 on them. You know what I mean? They love putting 63 on Oklahoma, knowing they could have scored 100 if they really wanted. You know what I mean? Justin Jefferson had like 7 touchdowns, or Joe Burrow had 7 touchdowns, I think, in the first half against Oklahoma.
It was ridiculous.
But they all know who they're really competing against.
Yeah. Like, but don't think that like SEC fans don't want that opportunity to prove it. You know what I mean? So, I mean, there's no question the season would be lacking if it were only the SEC. And, I think Greg Sankey said it best. Greg Sankey, I think he told Dan Patrick Tuesday morning, he said, could we? Yes. Like, could we play a season just ourselves? Yes. But sometimes in life, what you should do isn't always what you could do, or what you could do isn't always what you should do. And I think that's why it was so important to know that the ACC and the Big 12 were aligned with them so they could move forward. Now, the really interesting question becomes, if you play out this hypothetical, if the SEC, ACC, Big 12 play a season and the Big 10 and the Pac-12 sit it out, what is the residual effect on those conferences of missing a season of football, of potentially having all of their best players transfer to be able to go play this year,
right,
of missing maybe on a recruiting cycle? I mean, financially they're probably okay, but maybe not top to bottom if you're essentially missing out on all of your television revenue and the Big Ten contracts.
Well, remember the Pac-12 was already in a bad situation. They got a bad TV deal. I mean, they were already in a potential.
They got bad everything.
Right. I mean, and Jerry went to Arizona, so I mean, he knows what's going on there. It's
it's not good times.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. The Big Ten is fine, but the Pac-12 might not be, and that's sort of like the idea that Scott Frost was saying we're going to go play football somewhere. And Nebraska was saying that. Ryan Day was saying the same thing at Ohio State. That seems unlikely because if they leave, aren't they leaving forever? Like, you're not going back to the Big Ten if you're saying, you guys decided we're not going to play, we're going to go ahead and play. Like, there's no way that they go back to the Big Ten if they leave and go try to play for the Big 12 or whatever conference will have them this season, right?
I could come up with 2 potential realities. Okay, so think about what Notre Dame just did with the ACC. They basically, Notre Dame's not going to go to the ACC after this year.
Right.
For 1 year, we'll mesh you into our structure, and you can even compete for the ACC championship, et cetera, right? And the ACC love to have them because now they get to split Notre Dame's NBC TV revenue, right? Huge deal for the ACC, makes a lot of sense. And next year, Notre Dame can just go back to its own being. Let's say Nebraska, Ohio State, Michigan, Iowa, those are the 4 everyone seems to be talking about. Let's say they want to jump aboard and play this year, or whichever the Big Ten schools were, Penn State maybe, I don't know. And they sort of morph into the Big 12, which has 10 teams, now you have 14, and now you have 3 14-team leagues, and that looks a lot more equitable now.
Yes.
It potentially could, and then just next year you go back to your own thing. The other part of it could be exactly what you just said, which is the Big 10 could go, but if you're the Big 10, your value is in numbers. And certainly when it comes to Michigan and Ohio State, those are your two most valuable assets.
Right.
You're not going
can't lose it.
The league isn't going to kick them out. Now Nebraska solo, maybe a different story. But maybe this is ultimately the thing which pushes college football to the 4 16-team superpower leagues and a whole new structure, which is what I would love to see happen.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's realistic for 2021, but I think this is the thing that ultimately is the push to get college football there.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think how much has changed in college football within these last 6 months and how much will change over the next 6 months. I mean, you think about 100 years of college football, and it's like name, image, and likeness, creating a players' union. I mean, mobility. It's crazy how much is changing.
Not just football. I mean, Pac-12 said there will be no sports in 2020.
Right.
That's basketball too.
Right.
And those are the two money sports.
What's interesting about basketball, I think, so I had a conversation with Will Wade last week on my show, LSU's basketball coach.
Yeah.
And I asked him about that. And he even referenced the possibility of a bubble-like scenario when the semester ends for a non-conference tournament. So, like, you could be looking at, December, having basketball players on a campus somewhere. Maybe it's Disney or something like that. And they could get the season started that way. Now, I understand your point, Jeremy. I mean, that's still 2020. That's not 21. But
right.
I do think the spring 2021 semester, if you're going to realistically be gearing up for football, there's no reason you couldn't play basketball.
Yeah.
Which question are they really serious about playing football in the spring? Which I don't know if they are.
Do you think they made a mistake by not doing a bubble for college football?
I don't know how you logistically make that work.
That's a ton of people.
Right. There's too many players.
But what is doable though is the idea of football players take online classes for a semester. That's completely doable.
Right.
And then you isolate them in as best you can in their on-campus apartments, dorms, whatever they have. I mean, LSU, most places it's probably like, apartments. And then they're just going from there to football ops, weight room. I mean, your nutrition hall there. It's
a bubble.
Exactly. It's like
right.
Everyone has said, it's not easy. Like, no one is saying this is easy, but is it worth doing? The Big 10 and the Pac-12 have ultimately said, nope, not worth doing. The SEC, the ACC, the Big 12 are like, yeah, it's worth a shot.
Do you think there's any chance, and I know the SEC is kind of, you're an SEC country, but the SEC goes forward, ACC goes forward, Big 12 go forward. Do you think there's any chance the Pac-12 and the Big 10 back off now that they're okay, God, we're going to be screwed here? Or they made their bed now?
They can't. How can they?
Bingo. How do you do that? How do you put the toothpaste back in the tube? I mean, when you, and it's because they did it on the premise of health and safety of our student athletes. That when your premise is we're not playing because of the health and safety of our student athletes, and now you're going to go,
actually,
yeah.
Important. What the hell? Let's tee it up and kick it off. You can't unless if something fundamentally changes in the next 3 to 4 weeks. Like, I mean, they spit out a vaccine and everyone gets it, or
right.
The baby Jesus comes down on a cloud and wipes away COVID. Like, I don't know how you do this.
No,
I don't know how, if you're the Big 10 or Pac-12, you walk it back.
Well, Russia announced they had the vaccine this morning, so we're fine.
We have not tested vaccine, but we are going. Everyone get your vaccine.
Yeah.
My favorite was the Greg Sankey statement. He said, just the first part of it. He said, quote, "I look forward to learning more about the factors that led to the Big 10 and Pac-12 leadership to take these actions today." Just like, what are you doing? And I do think that there was probably, in working in conjunction with the Big 12, we've got a pretty good feel on Bob Bowlesby. And like the Power 5 conferences were constantly talking, we're working together. And then it was like as soon as the Big 10 and the Pac-12 went on their own to make the decision to only do conference only, and then now it's like, it's just a big FU from Greg Sankey and these other conferences saying like, why now? Why now before you've put on the pads, before you've actually done the things that you need to do to get ready for a football season without having the full breadth of knowledge of it?
It's amazing to me that the Pac-12 folks and the Big 10 folks, knowing everything that they allegedly should know about college athletics, think that they can just come out and that the SEC will just fall in line. Like, it'll be fine. We'll announce that this is over, and they'll say that's cool. We're out too. It's crazy.
Maybe the most discouraging thing is that if you really think back to March, they had 5 months, man.
Yeah.
They had 5 months for these collective Power 5 leagues to get on the same page. You had 5 months to say, okay, this is when we want to start. This will be our testing protocol. This will be when we play. Let's organize, whatever. And in 5 months, what we had last week was 5 leagues announcing 5 different schedules, 5 different formats with 5 different start dates. It's like everyone said, I believe you, we're just going to do our thing. Well, we're going to do our thing. Well, we think it should be done this way. And like nobody agreed. So the fact that the Big 10, like the reports from this weekend was that the Big 10 was prepared to pull the plug and they wanted to see if they could get the rest of the Power 5 on board with them. Are you being kidding me?
Right.
Jackleg's got anything done in 5 months, and now you think the decision to pull the plug is all of a sudden going to be this unanimous thing? Let's just go walk down the road all married together. What are you talking about? Like,
we'll wrap this up in 24 hours. It's fine.
I mean, it's no surprise that with that said, it's no surprise that the last 24 hours have gone the way it did, or 48 hours. The players that all of a sudden get together with the "we want to play" movement. You have some of the most prominent head coaches in college football. Jim Harbaugh, Ryan Day, James Franklin, like flipping the bird publicly to their bosses, to the university presidents who are trying to pull the plug on the season. You have the most recognizable names in that league saying, like, publicly and ardently lobbying against their bosses. Like, it was the most incredible thing. I mean, can you imagine your boss, like, putting forth an edict publicly, and then you go loudly on air and just lambaste your boss and what they just did?
No.
Like, get fired. But it goes to show you how.
Well, who's the actual boss here?
Right.
But that's the point, man. Like, that's why college football's structure is just, it's got to change. There's got to be an agreement among the Power 5 that if you want to avoid this from happening again, you have got to collectively agree, like you do with a championship, right? Like with the college football playoff, they've collectively agreed that this is how we'll crown our champion. There's got to be a collective agreement among the Power 5 that this is how we're going to govern ourselves. This is our structure, and this is going to be the person in charge of it. But the university presidents will not cede that control, and that's the problem.
So the prospect of, even though it seems like it's not going to happen, the prospect of no college football at all does make me want to think about one specific thing, and that's whiskey.
Yeah.
We're going to need a lot. We're going to need a lot of it. So I want to ask you.
Jeremy, I'm going to have college football. I'm in the SEC, bro.
I'm going to have college football and whiskey.
By the way, I've been to Tucson. I went in 2003 when LSU. I was a senior at LSU in 2003.
I was at that game.
And LSU absolutely skull drug Arizona.
Oh God, it was the last gasps of John Malkovich. I think that was it was either right before or right after all the players rebelled because they thought he was a racist, and that was before being racist was like a talking point in college football.
What's a thing?
Like John Malkovich made it happen.
That's how racist he was. Yeah, he was so racist they called out his racism years before that was a thing.
I think that was my sophomore year at college.
Okay.
And I remember like on Tuesday of that week walking to classes, and there were like RVs already there that drove in from Louisiana, and we had no idea what that was about. Like, who is here?
Why are they here?
Who are we playing on Saturday? Oh, it's the one of the Louisiana schools.
So the night before the game, and you'll have to help me here, Jeremy, but there was a row of bars, and I thought it was on campus. But it would have been the row of bars that everybody goes, whatever the row of college bars are. And there was like balconies on some of these bars, right? Second story. And I'm in one of these places, me and a couple of my buddies, and there's like, this guy's, he might as well be a soccer hooligan for all I know, like wearing a Ramon shirt and a shaved head and stuff. It's like, what do you, anyway. And he's like, hey man, what are y'all doing? We're like here for the game tomorrow. He goes, oh, U of A's got a game tomorrow? I was like, yeah. Who's playing? Like LSU. He thought I was talking about basketball. He had no idea. This was September. Actually, I got my ticket stub on the wall. This was the second week of the season. It would have, hang on.
Yeah. Here's the difference between these two schools.
Right. This is why the Pac-12 has canceled football already.
Yeah.
September the 6th, 2003. Actually, let me see.
I don't
know if I can flip this. It's camera. Whatever. Yeah. I was going to show you.
They were like, "Is it a basketball game?"
I think
not in September.
I believe the system that we had in place at the time. Yeah.
Yes.
That's every. I went to every game. That's every ticket stub from the 2003 national championship season, right there.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
So anyway,
I believe the way that happened was, if you wanted to go to the basketball games, you had to get your ticket stamped at the football games.
That's probably not a joke.
I'm not kidding. That's exactly what it was. I think I still have my card.
The two things I remember though were the soccer hooligan at that bar asking me about why we were all there. And then the next day, you couldn't even get into the parking lot, like to tailgate, until I think 2 hours before kickoff. So that was for LSU fans, because it's like people are out before the sun's up, and you're cracking your first beer at dawn, and it's like,
the problem is
out there until 5 o'clock.
The problem, and Arizona's gotten better at this since 2003, but not by that much. If you start tailgating at LSU times in Tucson, Arizona, you will be dead of heat stroke by kickoff, because they don't even kick usually until about 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. You want to talk about player safety? They have to not kick until then, or else you're going to have just players keeling over. So add to that college kids dehydrating the hell out of themselves, taking shots of whiskey in 115
Is it any worse in Baton Rouge, though? It's more humid. It's dry heat versus humidity.
Like, bro, come down one August or September and feel this. Like, it's like you're outside wearing them. There was a kid named oh man, God, why can't I remember his name? He was a receiver, came from California. First day, he never came he came for his visit in February, and they got him to commit, and he showed up for the first day of fall camp. Oh, I can't remember this guy's name. God, he played in the NFL too. He played for the Titans. He transferred to Cal and went and played for the Titans. He's a receiver. Anyway, the first day of practice was like, I'm out. He tried to quit. The coaches had to go get him at the airport. But then ultimately, like, he never made it past like fall camp. He was just like, I'm out. I can't do this. He went home to California because the weather was just so oppressive in August. It was just nothing he had experienced before.
The Pac-12 has just been looking for a reason to cancel football season. We didn't actually want to do this.
So what are we drinking tonight? What are you guys drinking tonight?
So I am drinking Four Roses. This is their 130th anniversary limited edition tonight. Four Roses does the 10 different recipes of whiskey, and every year they come out with a limited edition that's some combination of those recipes. I think this is the year they stopped putting it on the back, of course. I'm having some limited edition Four Roses. Love that stuff.
So that inspired me. One of my favorite bottles is my Four Roses Limited. This is the 2017 release. It is, it's barrel strength. It is 108 proof. I love Four Roses. I think everything they put out is just magnificent. I mean, if you get the yellow label up to the single barrel, or if you have something special like a limited or an Al Young or something like that, I mean, that's a really rare find. But they just they know what the hell they're doing, man. If you find something with a Four Roses label on it, chances are you're gonna have a really good night.
I don't know if I made the mistake of doing this, but I did it. I'm having to move in the next few weeks, so I had to count the number of bottles that I've got.
Oh my God, no, you didn't.
I found out that moving companies won't move alcohol because their insurance doesn't cover it. So I have to move my whiskey collection. So I had to count how many, and Four Roses is my favorite distillery too. And so I counted, just the first thing I want to know, how many unopened bottles of barrel strength Four Roses single barrel private picks do I have? And unopened.
Okay.
The bet with myself, I set an over under at 100.
Oh God.
And I pushed.
Wow.
So
that's impressive.
That's just Four Roses.
I don't know if that's impressive or terrible, but it's certainly something.
It certainly is notable.
So I'm always curious about this. If you're drinking a 2017 Four Roses limited edition, you're clearly more interested in whiskey than just like, I'm going to go get a bottle of Jack Daniels. How did that happen? How'd that happen for you?
So my origin story is I was always like a Jack and Coke guy or beer. And as you get older, you realize if you drink like 18 Sprites in your Jack Daniels throughout the course of the day, that's really not healthy. I'm the guy that I can't just drink a beer. A beer becomes 6 beers. That's also not great for your waistline. Harder to lose it when you're not like, you have the metabolism of a 20-year-old.
15,
so,
right?
Yeah, my cousins were already really into whiskey, and one day, it was Christmas Day, maybe 5 years ago or so, they were drinking Angel's Envy. I was like, let me try it. And I liked it. And I was like, give me a handful of other things I should try. And so one of them was Four Roses single barrel. They put me on some Jefferson's Reserve, Whistle Pig 10-year Old World, just and I really kind of found my stride. Like, I found my palate and what I liked. And then okay, what else? And then what hooks you is then you start going on the hunt, right? You start going on the hunt for all the unicorns, and it's like,
yep.
Now there's the fun of that, and then obviously the allocation season around Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I just got hooked on it. And I mean, now I know the things I like, and then I love to be able to go find those those rare finds. And so it's a hobby, but it's also something that I really enjoy. So
it's the endless chase for sure for the perfect bottle.
So what is your, you've been chasing stuff. You've got a good collection there behind you. What's your very favorite individual bottle that you've had?
This Four Roses Limited is up there.
Yeah.
I think the Van Winkle Lot B. Some people, I don't know how y'all feel about it, but some people argue that the Van Winkles and the Pappies are more hype. It's more sizzle than steak. I just don't buy it, man. I've done so many blind taste tests and picked the Van Winkles. It's just a better quality product. I love the oily texture, a smooth finish, a full bodied flavor. Like, it just always stands up. I mean, even when you'll do like the Weller 12 side by side with the Lot B, as much as I love Weller 12, I love that wheated bourbon. It's
right.
When you actually sit there and you let a Lot B open up, and then you sip it side by side, you go, okay, I get it. And even though it's the same mash bill, same rick house, same age, like same everything, and you can just tell the difference. It's like, okay, I get it. And the other thing that's interesting, though, and that's the bottles I've owned, of the Van Winkles, I actually think the Pappy 15 is the best. Now, I've not had.
I agree.
I have not had. There's a 30, isn't there? I've not had a.
There's a 10, a 12, a 15, a 20, and a 23.
But I think there's a 30 also. Like,
they've got some ultra limited edition, like they did like a barrel of 25 year. I don't think there's a 30. I could be wrong about that.
I've never had that. But I've had the 10, 12, 15, 20, 23. And experiencing the 23 was awesome because it's like, some people say I'll save this for a special occasion. Did y'all ever see the movie Sideways?
Mhm.
Of course.
You know, like where at the end of the movie he goes, "No, the day you open whatever that bottle is the special occasion."
Right.
So like that's kind of how I think about whiskey, man. I don't leave rare bottles unopened on my shelf, man. It's like if you have something and you have someone that would appreciate it, man, bust that thing open and have a time. Make a memory. So like there was a guy who came into my show as a retailer in Baton Rouge, and he brought in a bottle of Pappy 23. We opened it up and I sat there and sipped it in like a paper cup on set. You know what I mean? Just
Mhm.
but I'll never forget that, man. That dude gave me
Right.
a forever experience. But I still
Totally.
think of all of them, the 15 is better. I thought the 23 was a little too oaky.
Yeah, I agree.
But 15 I think is that sweet spot.
So, do you find reasons to get yourself on the road when LSU's playing Kentucky in like anything?
So that's a good story. It's a good question. So LSU's supposed to play at Kentucky next year, and because of the new stupid conference, like the way LSU schedule falls, in
They never
football,
play Kentucky.
play Kentucky. Right? So they're supposed to play there next year, and there is a big, obviously.
Thank God not this year.
Yeah, right. So, but that's why some people were fretting. Some people. Okay, that's why I was fretting. If they were to the next two rotating cross divisionals for LSU, that would have been home against Tennessee and at Kentucky, and so there's no way I'd have gone up there this year and done that whole thing.
Right.
So, But Jeremy, so how many total bottles?
Right.
Is 100 unopened barrel picks of Four Roses. Like how 100 unopened? That's like I thought I was. I'm gonna tell my wife about it. Like
he has multiple cabinets, like just full.
It's
so my last count total bottles. I have 156 bottles. Like that's total, and I thought that was enormous.
That's a lot.
Like, it is enormous.
That is
it is
a lot.
enormous.
I don't
You're
personally
right.
know anybody that has that many. You're telling me you got 100 just of Four Roses.
It's a bit of an issue, and
wait. So how many do you? How many do? I'm also wondering this.
I don't have an answer for you.
You haven't. You just counted your Four Roses unopened, or are you just ashamed to tell us how many you counted?
No, I'm not. I think one of the biggest problems in the world in general is overabundance of information. So
what a cop out.
I started counting because I'm, having to prep how the heck am I going to move all this? And I started with unopened Four Roses just because that's my favorite and I wanted to see where I was at with all that. And then once I got to 100, I said, this is more information than I require. I'm clearly not doing anything with this data here. It's just academic. And
if you were to venture a guess, an estimate, 500?
Let's see. Looking around at the various boxes and cabinets where I know they are.
Right. Plus, you have like barrels that you've picked. Like, don't you have? Did you have a barrel delivered that's in your garage right now?
Well, most of that's gone.
That's the Nashville 7-year rye.
Yeah, that was the rye that I picked.
Have you heard about Nashville Barrel Company, Matt?
It's really good. We'll talk off. We'll talk offline.
We'll have to get you some of that. Stuff. It's really good.
I had a pallet of it delivered to my house. I have plenty for you. But let's see. The number's got to be probably 250 to 350 in that range. That's if you don't include the garage. And the problem for the garage is transitory. So
right.
I buy these barrels with groups of people that I'm friends with. We go up to Kentucky or Nashville or Vegas or wherever the barrels happen to be, and we go pick them. And they have to get delivered somewhere. The distilleries and the distributors and the stores won't send like 2 bottles to everybody. So the barrel has to go somewhere. And then from there, you have to figure, okay, well, what am I going to do with all this stuff? So when, like what Ari's talking about, when that pallet of rye got delivered to my house a couple months back now, it just never came inside my house proper. It just stayed out in the garage. And as people came and got them, or as I sent them to them or whatever, slowly the numbers started to dwindle. But then you'll have problems like with the Nashville Barrel Company. I wasn't actually, the three of my friends were in Nashville picking them that day, and these idiots couldn't pick one. So they call me and they say, oh, God, there's two that we really like. I think we probably need to get the second one. And what did this idiot say? This idiot said, well, okay. So there's two barrels. Yeah, we got them. Yeah, we got them both. So yeah,
they're both. By the way, they're both amazing. I'm not a huge rye guy, but holy crap, these are.
They're really good. I'll make sure you get to try them.
Oh,
if you love rye, you'll love these. Yeah. And they get to be, you can do these aftermarket labels. So our Nashville Barrel Company ryes have Mike Tyson punch out stickers on them. Yeah. You get to do fun crap like that. Yeah. But yeah, it's.
Don't be downplaying the 21 Kings.
Well, that's the name of the barrel group, and we've got Eagle Rare coming tomorrow. I'm excited about it, actually.
Nice. Very nice. I got really lucky, I would say. So the Sazerac company, which owns Bubba Race and a billion other brands, they're based out of New Orleans,
right?
And they have the Sazerac house down on Canal Street. And just recently did a deal with my show to where their Sazerac rye is now like the official whiskey of AFR, my radio show. So
awesome.
It's a really cool partnership because they've of course got the Sazerac house where they do distill and bottle, not a ton. I mean, most of it's obviously done in Kentucky, but they do distill and bottle some of the Sazerac rye there on Canal Street in New Orleans. And you can go see the whole process, how it's done. They turned it into basically a museum, which is phenomenal. If you're in New Orleans, go there. It's a block off Bourbon Street on Canal.
No, it's great.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal place. But that's been a really cool partnership, and candidly, I'm hoping I can turn that into a few VTACs this year. So
that's the whole reason this show really even exists, is to try to do something like that.
Yep.
That is true.
All right, Matt, I appreciate your time. This has been a lot of fun, man. This has been very enjoyable. What's that?
Well, yeah, no, you're right. I have a steak. I have a steak issue.
I'm a guest on your show. I got to pour my own booze, and I don't even get steak.
You're gonna get booze.
What do you think I came for? I came for the booze and the steak. And
the booze is gonna happen. I can't promise the steak.
The steak, it might take a little bit to get you there. It might be a little rubbery.
I've got I can make sure that gets delivered, but
still in the sous vide, like in the water with the sous vide.
I'm trying to figure this out right now. If you remember our one of our first guests, Jarrett Udick, he hooked me up with a gigantic whole rib rack.
Yes,
and I've got it aging in my fridge right now, and I'm trying to figure out what the heck am I going to do with this thing. It's like the size of my torso here.
Where do you live?
I live in San Antonio.
Oh, I love San Antonio. I was gonna say because if the next time I'm in San Antonio, I'll come eat some of the rack.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. Yeah, come. I'll get a.
What are you cooking with now, Jeremy? You don't have a smoker anymore, do you?
No, I do.
What do you have?
I've got the Weber grill fire. So
nice.
My buddy from college that invented the June Smart Oven, they partnered with Weber to do a smart smoker, which goes against everything that I've ever.
Well, you used a Traeger, dude. Come on.
I completely embrace my pretentiousness. No issue with that.
I'm a total snob when it comes to steak, to whiskey, and to my college football. There's no question. I don't take me to Ryan's Steakhouse. Don't pour me some cheap whiskey. And I certainly don't want to watch the Group of Five or FCS ever play a game of football.
Wait, so what's the best steakhouse in New Orleans in your opinion?
I'd probably go to one of the Brennans. You go to Dickie Brennan's Steakhouse. It's just
the new quarterback of the LSU Tigers.
What's that? Oh yeah, well yeah, Miles is of the. Which is so weird though because his dad Owen left New Orleans and didn't want to be part of the restaurant.
Interesting.
Wow. It's really strange, but I wouldn't say that they're estranged. I don't know if that's the case. He just didn't want to be part of the whole Brennan's restaurant empire. So like they moved to Mississippi and, they live on the coast and, hunt and fish and all that stuff. But Dickie Brennan's probably, I would say. I mean, you can go to your Mortons or something like that. But I mean,
Right.
Dickie Brennan probably plays.
Ari, who was it that stole my restaurant recommendation?
Scott
Do you
Van
remember
Pelt.
this? That's right. Yeah, Ari was going. Was it the Super Bowl was there or something was there? The Super Bowl was in New Orleans, and Ari's going down there, and I love New Orleans. I go there all the time. Back when like we would go places. And
that was my first time in New Orleans. And I had,
So
and then
Ari-
like after that, I went like 4 times in like 2 years, basically.
So Ari calls me. He's like, "Where should I
the
go
best.
to eat?" I go, "Well, you got to go to Giacomo's." And he couldn't remember the name. There's a hyphen in there. It was complicated for Ari.
So we had Scott Van
And
Pelt
then
at the radio show on Radio Row, and he's like, "You got to go to Giacomo's." I was like, "All right, for sure."
yeah, Scott Van Pelt says I got to go to Giacomo's. Yeah, I'm going. And then he went and he tweeted about Scott Van Pelt's great recommendation.
It's like finding it because Giacomo's is just like a house street. It's like it's so nondescript. You'd never know you were going to a restaurant. It's like, I'm going to walk you through the shotgun house to the very back.
Yep.
No, it's the best though. It's fantastic.
Order anything. It's like we have a frog leg topped with duck. I'm like,
sure,
fine.
fried alligator.
Delicious.
Bring it out. Yeah, totally.
Right.
What about Willamay's Scotch House? Another place that's damn good. New Orleans, I think, has the best food. I think New Orleans has the best food in America.
I'm super biased, but I mean, you could just Google that and find any unbiased opinion that would do the same thing. It's an amazing place with a culture all its own, and people say you could literally just stumble into any hole in the wall on a street and have the best meal of your life, and it's actually really true.
True. Yeah. Matt, appreciate your time, buddy. After further review, 3 to 6 on ESPN Baton Rouge, 104.5, ESPN New Orleans. What else you got going on, man? Oh, Locked On Tigers.
I believe be everywhere your audience is. So, man, I get up, I do a Facebook Live show every morning.
Nice.
I do my podcast, mid-morning. I do my radio show in the afternoon. I got a daily email blast that goes out. I even do TikTok videos. I do everything. Like, if you can spell my name, you can find me on the internet somewhere.
Matt Moscona, appreciate your time. Thank you very much joining us here on Steak, Bourbon, and Sports.
My pleasure, guys. Thanks.
We good?
Yeah.
So in all seriousness, get me an address. I'll get you some of that rye.
Okay. Yeah. No, for sure.